I wasn't supposed to work that night. My manager texted me last minute, begging me to cover the late shift because 2 employees had called in sick. Honestly, after the week I'd had, the last thing I wanted to do was flip burgers. But the money was worth it, so I dragged myself through the biting wind and walked into Five Guys, expecting another painfully boring shift. The place felt wrong from the start. It was subtle, but it was there. The fluorescent lights flickered every few seconds, not in a normal, faulty way, but like they were blinking. The grills hissed softly, even though no one had turned them on yet, and the whole restaurant smelled faintly. Sweet, not the familiar smell of fry oil or sizzling beef. It was something else, something metallic and cloying. My coworker Gina was already at the register, her foot tapping anxiously against the floor. As I walked up, she whispered, "You feel that?" I looked around. "Feel what?" She didn't answer. She just stared at the main entrance, her eyes wide like she was waiting for someone or something to walk through the door. The shift was surprisingly normal at first. A slow trickle of customers came in, escaping the storm that was now raging outside. Rain slammed against the windows, and every so often a boom of thunder would shake the metal frames of the building. The storm felt angry, almost alive. Around closing time, the restaurant finally emptied out. I started wiping down the tables while Gina went to secure the doors. And that's when the knocking started. 3 slow, deliberate knocks from the back door. It wasn't loud. It was almost polite, which was somehow even more unsettling. Gina froze, her hand hovering over the lock. "We're closed!" She called out, but her voice trembled. There was no answer. Curiosity got the better of me. I walked toward the back, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. The knocks came again, louder this time, more insistent, like whoever or whatever was behind that door was losing its patience. As I got closer, the air turned ice cold. My breath fogged in front of my face. Before I could tell Gina not to open anything, the whirring sound of the receipt printer cut through the silence. She walked over to the front counter and picked up the slip of paper. "What the hell?" she whispered. I walked over to see. It wasn't a food order. It listed our names, Gina and me. And underneath our names was a single chilling line. Final preparation. Just then, the knocking stopped. I tried to play it cool. I told Gina it had to be a system glitch, maybe some teenagers pranking us. But deep down, a cold dread was spreading through my chest. I felt like we were being watched. Like something was waiting just outside, enjoying our fear. Suddenly, the lights went out. The entire restaurant was plunged into darkness, except for the faint, hellish red glow from the cooling fryers. A sound echoed from the other side of the room, a wet drip, drip, near the milkshake machine. I squinted into the gloom and my blood ran cold. A woman was standing there. Her dark hair was soaking wet and stuck to her face. She was wearing a Five Guys uniform, but the colors were faded and washed out, as if she'd been submerged underwater for a long, long time. She didn't speak. She just stared at us, a smile stretched far too wide across her face to be human. "I came back," she whispered, her voice raspy and thin. Gina gasped. "Lori?" "But you called in sick." Lori's smile widened. "I did," she said. "I never made it home." She took a step forward and water dripped from her shoes, but instead of splashing on the floor, the droplets sizzled and dissolved into the tiles, like the building itself was absorbing her. I looked at her face, at her eyes, and my stomach twisted. They weren't eyes anymore. They glowed faintly, like dying embers in the dark. Gina grabbed my arm. "We have to go." Before she could finish, the sound of shattering glass exploded behind us. The back window had been smashed inward, and a figure was climbing through. It was a man. No, not exactly a man. He wore a stained, patchy clown outfit. His makeup was smeared into a disturbing, chaotic mask, his grin unnaturally wide, his teeth a sickly yellow. He dragged a rusted crowbar across the floor, the metal screeching a horrible sound that set my teeth on edge. "The fries," he hissed, his voice a grotesque parody of cheerfulness. "Are to die for," Gina screamed, a raw, terrified sound. I grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the hallway that led to the freezer, but the clown blocked our path. At the same time, Lori drifted closer from the other side, her face twisting into something monstrous and inhuman. We were trapped between them. "Time for tonight's special," the clown cackled, raising the crowbar. "Hide and shriek." We had no choice. We bolted for the dry storage room. Boxes of buns and potatoes toppled behind us as we slammed the heavy door shut and shoved a metal storage rack in front of it. The lights in the small room flickered violently. Shadows stretched and danced unnaturally across the walls, taking on monstrous shapes. "What the hell is going on?" Gina whispered, her voice choked with tears. I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that this place wasn't just a restaurant tonight. Something had crawled through the cracks of reality and found us. Something hungry. The intercom speaker above us crackled to life. A distorted electronic voice whispered through the static. "Order ready for pickup." The door rattled violently. A high-pitched giggle echoed from the other side. Then another. Then footsteps. Not one pair, or even two. At least three. The clown, Lori, and something else, something heavy, dragging its feet across the floor. The power surged. The freezers in the next room roared like beasts. For a split second, the emergency lights turned a deep blood red, and in that horrifying flash, I saw a face reflected in the metal prep table. It wasn't mine. It was another version of me, smiling with blackened teeth, mouthing the words, "Let them in." Gina covered her ears, rocking back and forth. "Make it stop, please." The door slammed again, hit with a force that no human could manage. The entire metal rack we'd pushed against it jumped off the floor. "We're dead," Gina sobbed. "We're actually literally dead." But then in the far corner of the room I spotted it, the emergency panel. The silent alarm, if I could just reach it. I dropped to the floor and started crawling, staying low, praying the creatures outside wouldn't hear me over the chaos. The clown's voice drifted through the cracks in the door, singing a twisted nursery rhyme. "One little hider shaking in a crate. Come out, Blondie. We saved you a plate." Lori's whisper followed, a cold breath against the wood. "You didn't hear me scream." Nobody did. I reached the panel and slammed my hand on the alarm button. For one single, heart-stopping moment, there was silence. Then, everything exploded at once. Lights burst overhead, showering us with sparks. The door flew open, the heavy metal rack flung aside like it was made of paper. The clown lunged first, his crowbar raised high, but some invisible force yanked him backward into the hallway with incredible speed. Lori shrieked, a sound like a dying animal, as her form dissolved into black smoke. Sirens wailed outside, growing louder and louder. Police officers flooded in through the front doors, their guns drawn, shouting commands. The clown vanished into the shadows, crawling up the wall like an insect before disappearing completely into the ceiling vents. Lori's form evaporated into thin air, her voice echoing one last time. "You didn't cover for me." And then she was gone. I don't remember much after that. I remember cops pulling us out, their faces a mix of confusion and concern. I remember paramedics checking our vitals, asking questions we couldn't answer. The manager arrived, his face as white as flour. They found nothing. No clown. No body. No signs of forced entry. The broken window was perfectly intact. They showed us the security footage from that night. On the screen, the restaurant was completely empty. It was just footage of two terrified employees, me and Gina, running and hiding from shadows that weren't there. Gina quit the next day. I did too. I couldn't set foot in that place again. But the story doesn't end there. 2 nights later, I was in my apartment packing my things to move. A slip of paper slid under my front door. There was no envelope. Just a piece of paper with a message written in thick red marker. "Order for pickup, you." And at the bottom, smeared in something dark and sticky that wasn't ink, was a single greasy handprint.